David, lovely to see you as always. Interesting actually listening there to Sir Alex Ferguson, who said that this club is all about winning the league. It doesn't matter what we do against Manchester City. Well, that does feel like a long time ago because, boy, do they have a lot on their plate right now to get back to there, David. What do you have in terms of juicy details behind the scenes?
Bex, I'll get stuck straight in with the logistical part of things. I don't think we're going to hear an appointment from Manchester United, an announcement today, because they wouldn't tend to do this sort of thing on a match day. So possibly we're looking at early part of next week, tomorrow or Tuesday, in the build-up to that match against Arsenal on Thursday, which, like today's game, is huge. They've still got a few bits to sort out on the contracts, but there's nothing to be concerned about. There may be a bit of a worry about the new British government quarantine rules and how quickly Ralf Rangnick will be able to get over and get working in his new job. But it should give Manchester United a boost ahead of this massive game. He has agreed a 6-month deal as interim manager, and there's a 2 years further on top of that in a consultancy role, which many people feel will be crucial because this is a guy who's regarded as one of the foremost operators in world football. Now, we talked last week about how quickly it unravelled under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and you may say that going for Ralf Rangnick is something that is long overdue. We've spoken on NBC for a long time about how many people at and around Manchester United just thought Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was never quite up for that job. Well, the feeling is that Ralf Rangnick is, and people I've spoken to in and around the club are really excited by this. The news that I broke, actually, late last week has already lifted the club, the players, the staff, and it's going to be an intriguing time because he is a top operator. He came through a really competitive process in terms of the fact that Manchester United had conversations with a number of top coaches, the likes of Ernesto Valverde, who's coached at Barcelona, among others, Rudi Garcia, who's done well in France, and a number of other names were mentioned as well. But head and shoulders above all of them was Ralf Rangnick. He knew Manchester United well. They had gone and studied him for a number of years over in Leipzig, one of the clubs at which he had coached and been a sporting director. John Murtough, Manchester United's football director, was absolutely key in this appointment. He drove it because he was the one that visited Leipzig just a few years ago. And there's always been lines of communication. Ed Woodward knows Ralf Rangnick, and he also was the one who pushed to grant Rangnick that extra 2-year consultancy basis. And Rangnick will look to get to work immediately. The problem is there's not much time, and he's a builder. He would want to build from the bottom up, have a pre-season, have a lot of time and resource, but they need to win matches now. It'll be really interesting to see what sort of dynamic happens with the Manchester United hierarchy, who don't like to relinquish power, and Ralf Rangnick, who wants to take a lot of power. But I think it will go pretty well, if I'm honest. And then they will look to appoint a permanent successor to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer next summer. If Rangnick does well, perhaps that could be him. But he's not coached really for 10 years. He's been more of a sporting director. So the suspicion is they will still go for a permanent successor, maybe in the form of Maurizio Pochettino, although, like I told you last week, that is not as advanced as some have reported. Maybe Erik ten Hag from Ajax, who has a release clause, in the summer. Brendan Rodgers still being mentioned as well. But I do think there is now more optimism around Manchester United, and there needs to be, because there's a huge amount to play for after today. 25 league games to go, an FA Cup campaign, and the Champions League, which they've now qualified for. I'm losing my breath. I've got so much to say, but it should be happy days for Manchester United.
Brilliant, David. That's why we have you on, because you've got so much to say. And what have you got to say about Newcastle? Because yesterday, of course, defeat for Eddie Howe in his first game as the Newcastle manager on the touchline, having self-isolated last weekend. I mean, they are rock bottom of the Premier League, 6 points from safety. It's almost unthinkable for the likes of Amanda Staveley to believe that Newcastle might get relegated, David.
Newcastle, Bex, are in big trouble. They really are staring at a relegation battle. They're bottom of the league. They're 7 points, I think, now adrift of safety. They've still yet to win a game. And although they were slightly more competitive at Arsenal, they were way off the standard they need to be. And those players really need to up their game. Everything I hear from behind the scenes at Newcastle suggests that Eddie Howe has been like a breath of fresh air. The intensity of training has raised. The spirit around the camp, the ownership, and Amanda Staveley in particular, are extremely happy. But that will count for nothing unless he starts to get the results. And they're not coming at the moment. 2 matches, 2 defeats, only 1 on the touchline because of his COVID diagnosis, which was the worst possible timing. They've got an absolutely monumental match now at Norwich, or against Norwich at home on Tuesday. They've got to pick up 3 points from that, you would imagine. Then they've got you would think, a winnable game too against Burnley. And in the meantime, they need to be looking forward to the January transfer window. Who might they be able to bring in to bolster their squad? And I've got to tell you, from everything I hear, there is a real vacuum of leadership at Newcastle at the moment. Amanda Staveley is trying her best, but she's pretty much on her own. You've got PIF, the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, the 80% owners who are not based in this country at the moment, although they have representatives coming over for the match. Amanda Staveley is running the show. There's no chief executive now. Lee Charnley has left, and bizarrely, he was involved in many of the conversations about appointing a new manager and a potential sporting director. Talking of which, they've got no sporting director. Reports in the UK suggested Michael Emenalo, formerly of Chelsea and Monaco, was the leading candidate, but it's gone quiet. I understand there's been no progress on that. Emenalo would be ready and available and prepared to take that job, but it may now sort of run on till after the January transfer window. And I think that would be very concerning, because Eddie Howe needs help. He doesn't want to be getting involved in many of the tasks that should be the responsibility of a chief executive and sporting director. And if they are to be relegated, Bex, well, it would be disastrous for this takeover. The Saudi Arabian consortium will not want to be playing championship football, but they need to understand that this is a realistic prospect now. It is a possibility, and form would suggest that they're up against it. If they are going to go down, well, Eddie Howe will, if he stays in charge, be confident of bringing them back up. He will want to instigate a project here at Newcastle, which will take time, belief, faith, everyone building around an identity. And it really will need a sporting director who can come in and work with him, which is what he was used to doing at Bournemouth. There's never been a more lucrative time to be in the Premier League than now. The finances available, the profile. Here at NBC, we're going to be covering the Premier League for many more years to come. And Newcastle desperately want to be a part of that. Relegation would not have been part of PIF's plans, nor Amanda Staveley, nor the third party involved in this takeover, the Rubin family. But they're in a precarious position. They need to get out of it quickly. And on the evidence of yesterday, they're not looking good.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern. And for even more content, head over to Peacock, where we've got live games, original series and a dedicated round-the-clock Premier League channel featuring studio shows, classic matches and much more.